So in this lecture, we're going to explore one of the most important aspects of mobile app design, which is user experience design and design thinking process. I'm your professor, Dr. Lisa English Dowdell. So when you think about your favorite mobile app, what makes them enjoyable to use? Why do some apps feel intuitive while others kind of frustrate you? Now, this is where UX design comes in. So by the end of this video lecture, you'll be able to understand and explain the core principles of UX design, including usability, accessibility, and user-centered design. You'll be able to apply the design thinking process to define problems, generate ideas, and create solutions. And you'll be able to demonstrate how UX design is iterative, refining ideas and prototypes based on user feedback. And then you'll be able to use empathy building techniques like empathy mapping to better understand user perspectives and define clear problem statements. So let's begin by exploring what UX design really means and why it's critical for mobile app development. Now, user experience design is all about how a user interacts with a product, system, or service. It focuses on creating intuitive, efficient, and enjoyable experiences for our users. Now, the three core principles of UX design is usability. Can users easily accomplish what it is that they set out to do? Accessibility. Can users of all abilities, including those with disabilities, access and use the app? And then user-centered design, are the needs, preferences, and behaviors of users driving the design? Now, if a mobile app is difficult to navigate, if it's slow, or if it's confusing, users won't hesitate to delete it. That's why UX designers must always put the user first. This leads us to design thinking, a process that helps us create solutions that truly meet the user's needs. Now, design thinking is a problem solving approach that focuses on understanding users and iterating on solutions based on feedback. It consists of 5 key stages. Empathize, where we try to understand the user's needs and their challenges. Define, which clearly states the problem that you're trying to solve. Ideate, which brainstorms multiple solutions. Prototype, which creates like basic versions of the app to test various different ideas. And then test, which gathers feedback and refines the design. So think of design thinking as a cycle rather than a straight path. You don't just go through these steps once. You repeat, you refine, and you improve based on your users' feedback. So empathy is the foundation of this process. And the better you understand users, the better your solutions will be. So let's talk about each one of these stages. So the first stage of the process, like I said, is to empathize. So sometimes this is referred to as understanding. During this step, we get to know the user and their problems that they face. You should observe and engage with the people that are going to be using the product to better understand them, on an emotional and a psychological level. You should take the time to know the industry you're designing for. Only through proper research, can we know what the user's thinking. Anything outside of that is going to be an assumption. So we can accomplish this through like group interviews, as is scenario mapping, mind mapping, empathy mapping. We're going to talk a little bit later about that. But some of the obstacles that we face when we try to empathize is, again, designers try to assume that they know what the user's thinking. Now, the next stage is define, also known as analyze. So it's during this stage or phase of the process that we define the user's needs and their problems. So we should take insight from the empathy phase and try to make sense of them. We can look for patterns and document pain points, and this is gonna all yield like a problem statement. Now, the tools used during this phase are storyboarding, building personas, and a prioritization matrix. Now, we must be sure that we form a user-centered problem statement, and it focuses on the users and their needs, not on the product specifications or the business outcomes. We should also ensure that it's not too broad and not too narrow. Now, the next stage or phase of the design thinking process is to ideate, where we generate ideas, for innovative solutions. Now, we should take what we've learned in the earlier phases and think about different ways to solve the problem. Remember, no idea is a bad idea. So when working in a group, you should create different ideas and then decide on what's most workable. Now, the tools used during this phase is brainstorming, sketching, and doing dot voting. Now, it's important to think outside of the box and encourage wild ideas. Now, this next phase of the process is prototype. Now, as an IT geek, I love this phase because it allowed my ideas to come to life visually. In the design thinking process, we don't know yet if the solution we create is going to work. So during this phase, we turn the ideas into tangible products by creating like a rough model or a sketch. Remember, how users respond to our prototype might indicate, if our design should either be rejected or accepted. Now, the fifth stage or phase of the process is to test. This is where you test your solution. You should invite users to test out and respond to your prototype. Now, their responses will let you know whether to move forward or kill your idea before investing additional resources, into it. Now, during the testing phase, ask if the solution is useful. Is it usable? Is it desirable? Is it effective? And is it efficient? Gather feedback about how the user feels about your idea. Now, during this phase, we need to be sure we listen to our users. And if they determine it's not a good idea, we must be open to change and starting all over from scratch if we need to. Now, the tools during this phase are a website that you can use called usertesting.com, or if you have direct access to your users, then you would test them directly. Now, the key is design thinking is a philosophy and not a strict recipe, of what to do. You must also remember it's a cycle. Okay, so after you test, you might come up with better ideas or ways to improve your design. So you might have to iterate through the phases until the best solution is produced. Okay, because empathy is a huge consideration in this, I want to talk a little bit about empathy because this is one of the most powerful tools in the UX design. Now, empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to understand their experiences, their frustrations, and needs. A lot of times people confuse this with sympathy. Sympathy is then when you just feel sorry for someone, but empathy is when you're actually putting yourself in that person's shoes. You're feeling what they feel. You're trying to understand how they feel. Again, their frustration, their pain points. So in mobile app design, this means observing how our users interact with our apps. This means listening to the user's pain points. And this means understanding what frustrates or what delights them. Now, one of the best ways to apply empathy in UX design is through empathy mapping. Now, empathy mapping is how we communicate the user's struggles, their challenges, their frustrations to the powers that be, like the stakeholders. So an empathy map is a simple, easy to digest visual that captures knowledge about the user's behaviors and their attitudes. Empathy maps are most useful at the beginning of the design process after user research, but before requirements and concepting. Now, it synthesizes the research observations and reveals deeper insight, about a user's needs. And they can guide the creation of maybe personas or bridge personas and concept deliverables. Now, this is an example of an empathy map and what you'll be creating. Um, as I'll be showing you how to a demo of how to create this. Now, empathy maps, they're divided into 4 quadrants. So we define like what the user says, what they think, what they do, and what they feel. So empathy maps, they were originally invented by Dave Gray at X-Plane as an attempt to limit miscommunications and misunderstandings about target audiences. So when conducting user research, your findings are visualized through an empathy map in an easy digestible format. So empathy mapping can point out gaps in user research. They can highlight like further insights that need to be discovered. Now, some quadrants may overlap. So if so, then just pick one. Okay. If you don't have anything to put in a quadrant, then more research is needed. Now, in the says quadrant, these should be like direct quotes from the user that have been gathered from the research phase or maybe some previous data. So examples might be, I need something fast, or I'm not sure where to go from here, or I want something reliable. The thinks quadrant, this is what users think, but does not say out loud. So you try to understand like why they're reluctant to share, and a lot of times this is because maybe they're too polite, or they're afraid, but these are things that they may show you, and you may be able to observe this, like, if they've got like this annoying look on their face, then they're thinking that maybe this is annoying. The app or the process is annoying. Now, in the fields quadrant, this is where we'll talk about or we'll include like the user's emotional state. So you should list like the emotions by a short description, like, overwhelmed, which means that, there's too many decisions to make, then you can think about like what worries or excites the user, or that they're impatient, is the page loading slowly or something like that, or are they seeming confused, do they look like they're feeling some confusion, meaning that there may be too many contradictory, things that are going on the page. And then the last quadrant is the does. And so this is what users physically do and how they do it. So basically, like examples might be where they search for back buttons frequently, or they shop around, to try to compare prices. By looking at the user's needs through these lenses, we can see the complexity of their needs at times when they might say one thing and do another. And then we can find solutions that meet them, where they are. So again, says is going to be, what does the user explicitly say? Thinks is what thoughts are going to, go through their mind, and when they're doing testing, sometimes you might want to even ask them to kind of think out loud. Feels is what emotions do they experience, and then does is what actions do they actually take. Now, by analyzing all of these, we can define that clear problem statement using this format here. This user X struggles with, and then we state the specific problem because, and then we state the reason, and they need, and then we state the solution to be able to achieve, the goal. So, for example, if we were designing, say, a fitness app, we might define a problem like this. We say, Jane, a busy college student struggles with maintaining a workout routine because her struggle is unpredictable. And she needs an app that provides quick, flexible workouts to stay active. Now, this format makes sure that we're focusing on real user challenges, not just what we assume users need. Now, the thing to remember is that great UX design is never finished. It's an iterative process that involves constant improvement based on user feedback. So, once you create that prototype that you're going to be using, um, you want to test it, like I said, with real users. You want to observe how they actually interact with the app. Okay. You want to gather feedback. You want to know what works well, what frustrates them. And then you want to refine the design. You want to adjust it based on the insight, from your users. And then repeat the cycle. You want to improve on it, then you want to test it again, and then you want to refine it further. Each iteration moves you closer to an intuitive and seamless experience. Okay, so now let's recap. So, UX design is all about creating a seamless, user centered experience. Design thinking helps us structure the UX process starting with empathy. And then empathy mapping helps define real user problems and ensure solutions are built around the actual needs of the user. And then great UX is iterative. So it's about testing, refining, and improving continuously. Now, in the next part of the video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create an empathy map. And remember, this is how we craft our problem statement so that we can move toward a better UX solution. Okay, so this video is going to walk you through creating an empathy map. Um, so what you're going to do is you're going to select an app um, that is a need. In today's technology-rich world, you're going to create a fictional user, and then you're going to complete the empathy map based on that fictitious user. Now, remember, the goal is not to correctly classify everything, you know. It's basically just to identify with your user, so I don't want you guys to overcomplicate so like I said, do the best that you can as far as, listing out the different um, categories and things like that. So we're first going to start, like I said, we're going to have it, you're going to pick an app. Okay. So what I did just to kind of make it so that I could just use something that we can all kind of relate to. I just came up with a fictitious app, but you'll actually go in and maybe find a real app, something that you probably use on your phone or something like that. So my app is called Campus Life, and it's a mobile app that's designed to, like, say, streamline student life by combining like an event calendar, campus map, plan tracking, and a student group coordination all into one app. And the app is basically targeted to first year college students, who might feel overwhelmed by, like, say, managing multiple responsibilities. So, like I said, once you find your app, then you're going to create a fictional user and you're going to name your user, because you want to actually kind of put them, be in their shoes. You want to empathize with them, describe like who they are, if you're doing something for like a business, maybe what they do for a living, if that's applicable, maybe describe their gender, their age, whatever it is that you want to describe about them, so that you can kind of think from their perspective, for this particular assignment. So my persona is a first year student named Jasmine, and she's tech savvy. I'm thinking she's tech savvy, but she's just overwhelmed with managing like multiple apps, for her daily college needs. Okay. So what I've got here, and I've got this for you to be able to download, it's a Word document. If you don't want to use this, you can create your own, but I just thought it was kind of easy for me to be able to provide one for you. And so what you're going to do is you're going to fill out each one of these quadrants based on like what the user says, what they think, what they do, and what they feel. So for like the says, what you want to do is you want to imagine what the persona may say about their needs and their experiences. So you might want to prompt them, thinking in your head, you would prompt them to say like, what would Jasmine say when she's talking about her struggles. Okay, what phrases or feedback might she share, if she were to do an app review, of our app. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter um, some of the things that I think she would say. Okay, so some of the things Jasmine may say is, I need to keep track of my events in one place. Where's my next class? I get lost so easily. I'm always late because I can't figure out, the dining hours, things like that. These are things that she would say. Then what we want to do is we want to consider, like, what might be going through Jasmine's mind. Okay, so what does the user think? So some prompts that you could maybe kind of to get an idea of this is to say, like, what are Jasmine's internal concerns or doubts about the app? What would she wonder about its usefulness and its usability? So let's go ahead and note those things. Okay, so some of the things that we're prompting ourselves that Jasmine would think is, am I missing out on important events because I don't know about them? Why isn't there an easier way to find my way around campus? It's so frustrating to feel unorganized every day. Will this app actually save me time or just be another thing? Okay, so these are some of the things. So again, think about what your persona might be thinking, some of their internal concerns or their doubts about the app that you're working with here. Okay, the next thing is, what does the user do? So what you need to do now is kind of reflect on like what your user's current actions would be, working with the app, when they're testing the app. So, what does Jasmine do now to solve the problems? You know, um, how does she behave when faced with challenges with this app, that this app aims to address? So what does she do right now that we can maybe think about, and figure out a solution for? So let's go ahead and enter those. Okay, so what does she do? So, she'll check multiple apps for event reminders, like her Google Calendar, social media, so on and so forth. She gets lost on campus occasionally, and she uses a lot of sticky notes for meal planning. So again, I don't want you to overcomplicate this, but I want you to just kind of, like I said, think about, her current actions. What does she do now in order to maybe solve some of the problems that she actually has. Now, the last one is, what does the user feel? So what we need to do at this point is we need to kind of explore the emotional side. What emotions does Jasmine experience in her daily life without the app? And how would Jasmine feel if the app worked perfectly for her? So let's maybe think about some things. How does our persona feel? How do they feel? So let me make some notes of that. Okay, so we thought about how she might feel. So she feels overwhelmed, trying to manage everything at once. And she's embarrassed, when late to events or to her classes. She's stressed about keeping up with her schedule, but she's excited, when there's an app that promises to simplify her college life. So again, what you're going to do is you're going to take a mobile app, something that you use, create a persona that would be like the target audience of that mobile app, and then just kind of go through and just kind of maybe ask yourself, what would that person say? What would they think? What would they do? What would they feel? What this is doing, like I said, I don't want you to overcomplicate this. And again, this is not to to classify everything correctly in each one of these, but it's basically just to identify with your user, because once we're able to review this, we're able to kind of think about who our user is, identify with them, and then create a solution, that helps them, with whatever problems that they have, the negative things that they think about, the negative things that they feel, maybe, just to be able to relate to them better. Now, the assignment also goes on to talk about that once you've filled in each of the quadrants with the user's characteristics, which we've done, and I don't know why that's showing like that. I'm going to say ignore. Um, once we've classified them into each quadrant, then what we want to do is we want to start looking for patterns and identify some of the unknowns by looking at similar or related items within each quadrant or between each quadrant. And as you do, you want to imagine like how these different aspects of your users' lives really affect like who they are. And again, try to imagine yourself in their particular shoes. So it says, it goes on to instruct you to say, label the topics, of the map that may be assumptions or questions for later inquiry or validation, okay, using color coding. So again, I just want you to attempt to do this. It's not going to be perfect, but let's look at this and let's see, like maybe some of the patterns that we might see. So, in the say quadrant, we're seeing things like a repeat focus on organization, the needing, and we think about that they would need like maybe a single solution, to like maybe track the events and the dining hours. That's what I'm looking at here. So I'm just going to make a note of that. Um, and I'm just going to say, um, needing a single solution to track events and dining hours. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in like another color. I'm going to put it in like this red color so that I can know these are some of the things that I've kind of analyzed, as far as some of the patterns or the insights that I found. Um, let's see, maybe in the feel, I'm seeing a consistent emotion of like stress, or overwhelmed or frustration due to like the disorganization and efficiency, so that's something I want to make a note of as well. Okay, and again, how you want to handle this, there's no right or wrong, but this is the way that I'm kind of making note to myself as far as like the different trends that I'm seeing. You know, let's see, in the think quadrant here, I see concern revolving around like missing out or inefficiency, indicating that like maybe a single app could simplify her life. So I'm going to make a note of that. Okay, so I've made note of that. So again, um, kind of thinking about some of the common things that I'm seeing. And then let's see, in the do quadrant here, seeing things like, checking multiple apps, using sticky notes. To me, this highlights a fragmented system for managing responsibilities. So I'm going to make a note of that for myself. Okay, and I'm going to highlight that as well. Okay, so that's some of the patterns that I'm seeing, like in each one of the quadrants. Then I want to look and see, and again, we're doing all this so that we can better understand our persona and empathize with them. So now I want to kind of look at some patterns that are between the quadrants. So within like the say and the feel, she's talking about she's always late. She needs organization, which directly correlates with her feelings of embarrassment and stress. So those are some of the things that I'm analyzing. I mean, you don't have to make note of that, but I want you to kind of think about that. You know, um, in the think and the do, and we can, if you wanted to make a line through it, you can. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Um, and if you want to maybe look at like, um, her thoughts about like missing events. She mentions that, missing out on in important events, within the think column, and then in the do, um, she's talking about as far as multiple apps for event reminders. So we could go in. Let me see how I could do this. Again, this is not, you don't have to do this, but if I wanted to kind of, associate that, any extra notation is going to actually help you out, but that's something common. That's a common trend or pattern that I'm seeing, going on. And then she says, or emphasizes like a desire for like simplicity, you know, um, you know, that maybe we're looking at needing to consolidate solutions, So, that's something that she's saying. She's been thinking it, she's feeling it, those type of things. So, this kind of helps us to analyze all of that. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to kind of identify some unknowns, like what specific features, do we think that Jasmine would feel confident about using, in our app. So some of those things we can just kind of make note of them, but maybe conducting like a survey or some kind of usability testing, to find out like what features that she values most. Those are some of the unknowns that we may have. So if you wanted to make some note about some unknowns, um, some of the things we don't know is that, does she prefer like visual tools, or does she like text-based, reminders like notifications and things like that? What's her threshold for using a new app? How does she decide, you know, um, if the app is worthy, so basically for this assignment, really what I want you to do, like I said, I don't want you to overcomplicate it, but I did want to explain a little bit about how we use this empathy map. But like I said, if you just come up with, whatever the app is that you're going to be using, what your persona is, think about some of the things that they say, think about some of the things that they might think about the app, some of the things they may feel, some of the things that they do. And then if you're able to do some analysis as far as like finding different patterns with each one of these, or maybe patterns that are across the quadrants, then you can do that, and then I'll also include some additional resources about using empathy maps and things like that. But like I said, this is not to overcomplicate. There's really no right or wrong. It's just a way for you to put yourself in your user's shoes. Okay, so a way for you to really understand what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're doing, and what they're feeling. Okay, other than that, if you have any questions, please reach out to me and have a great week.